Brands are everything. They stand the test of time. It's a thing that can make or break any single organization. But the true power in any organization, I think that the next version of a podcast network is probably more akin to what you imagine a TV network is, with consumer facing value.
What does it actually mean to build a podcast network as a brand and not just a cluster of shows? And why would you put the network's identity front and center, almost like a television channel, so listeners recognize the brand before they recognize an individual podcast? For many in podcasting, brand means the artwork or a tagline. The idea of designing a network to become a household name like Bravo or HBO, not just a service provider to creators, is an approach one can learn from. This isn't just branding, it's a full operational strategy that changes what gets built, how shows are picked, and even how communities form around content. Today, my guest is AJ Feliciano. He came up through the ranks of TV, likes of NBCUniversal, helped build out Rooster Teeth's media network, and even helped them with their sale to Night. Now leads Companion, a network structured from day one to be consumer-facing, with everything from programming choices to marketing built in to serve and grow the overarching brand. I'm Greg Wasserman, the host of this amazing show, Podcast Network Insights. I spent 15 years in advertising sales, and since 2021, I've been immersed in the podcast ecosystem. As I believe life is about time and relationships, you never know where one conversation will lead. I've spent a lot of time building a lot of relationships and talking to a lot of different podcasters, from solo creators just getting started to the heads of industry-leading networks like my guest today. If you've ever wondered whether joining a network makes sense, how these networks actually run, other networks you could explore joining, advertising with, partnering with, learning from, then my goal is to give you a behind-the-scenes look so you can confidently navigate whether you host, produce, sponsor, or run a network. As you listen to this conversation, pay close attention to how AJ is operationalizing brand building inside a podcast network, why he thinks it matters for creators and marketing, and how structuring a network with brand at its core could shape the future of podcasting. I have to say, the show wouldn't be possible with some of the amazing companies and sponsors, so I must say thank you. The show is produced by the amazing team at Stories and Strategies. If you don't know Doug and Emily and their team, I suggest you reach out and learn what they do. I'm using RSS.com for my podcast hosting because podcast hosting is more than just storage. RSS.com provides so many of the features to ensure a great podcast experience. Easy to use, maximum distribution, community built in, monetization solutions, and so much more. Systems and processes are key for the consistency needed in podcasting, which is why I leverage Northflow, a dedicated podcast project management platform built by podcasters for podcasters. We all know the power of repurposing and taking one piece of content and turn it into many. That's why I use Cast Magic. It's a tool for content repurposing, helping with my titles, descriptions, but also the content that I give to my guests and so much more. Check out the links in my show notes, not only for these tools, but also for all the other links that I've got that we'll mention today's conversation. And stay tuned after the interview. There's more to my conversation as I share some of my takeaways. With that said, let's get into this conversation. Well, AJ, the name of the show is Podcast Network Insights. So I always like to ask my guests, when you hear the word podcast network, what does that mean to you?
I think I kind of see them as two separate things. There's podcast and then there's network. Network to me is a phrase that's has been used tale as old as time, between the advent of radio into TV and streaming and so on. You could really call a network of collective of anything across any medium. But podcast is the funny thing for me, because podcast it's a word that I really have struggled with, and I've been on various different panels and presentations where I sort of expressed this feeling that podcasting to me is not a medium, but the evolution of media itself. Prior to podcasting, I worked in television, mostly cable television, working at NBCUniversal for almost 10 years. And, I see not very many differences from what I was developing then to what I work on today, especially with so many video podcasts sort of coming online and so many of them now being licensed as streamers. We sort of saw this coming for the most part, right? And it makes a lot of sense that this would happen. And so I would put more emphasis on network over podcasts because the definition of what actually constitutes a podcast is going to evolve. And it might evolve to the point where the word podcast might actually drop out of our lexicon over time.
Interesting. I think you're the first person that said it will drop out of our lexicon as opposed to the meaning of podcasting kind of evolving.
Like I love podcasting. I do. I listen to audio only shows. I watch video, simulcasted shows online. It's just that I'm very much a realist and very much a pragmatist when it comes to, what is the meaning of podcast? What's the popularity behind it? And is it even really a podcast? I mean, I remember sitting on a panel with Ashley Carmen way back when at a past event where she had asked me, okay, well, what would you call it? I said, I would call it probably new broadcast to some extent. Broadcast is a term that was used during the old radio days, and then TV sort of adopted it, and it sort of carries the same type of resonance and sort of substantive value that I would equate to what we consider a podcast to be today.
New media. It's basically what's old is new, or we'll just keep coming up with a new name. It's like, all right, well, social media. Well, that was the new whatever, right? Is that the way we're thinking it?
Yeah, and I think about networks, and right now the definition of what constitutes a podcast network is one that would offer, services that range from production and financing and marketing and mostly sales and distribution across a collective of shows, whether they're owned and operated or whether they're partner shows. But that's also kind of reminiscent of like how prototypical TV networks kind of also operate. So the big difference here is that most podcast networks sort of operate under this B2B layer of like we are a creator service company versus TV networks that are most sort of designed to be consumer facing so that you tune to Bravo and the collection of shows that Bravo would offer to its end consumer. Bravo is actually the best example I can think of a TV network that has built out like sort of a consumer facing presence to it that you generally know what they deliver. And so I sort of see podcast networks sort of going in that direction, right? Collective of shows that are all sort of cut from a very similar cloth that target a similar audience that have a lot of, marketing opportunities sort of, embedded into the operations of it all.
I guess it's a good transition as we think about, the networks you've run and the network you're currently running, and the Bravo example, because what Companion's doing is it's got a specific ethos, a specific drive to it. So I guess for anyone that's listening, that's not familiar with what you're doing now, tell us a little bit more about where Companion fits into that mold.
Yeah, this is the second sort of media company that I've been part of building. And I learned a thing or two from my past experience in that the network that I had built prior to this came out of a consumer facing brand that had millions of fans worldwide. And that was really its superpower. It's not just having owned and operated, but having such a connective tissue and cross affinity across all of its shows where it felt like a singular community that we can then sort of transport into other revenue streams, other businesses that we had developed as part of Rooster Teeth. What I set out to do with Companion when they approached me, the question was point blank: if you were to do this all over again, how would you do it? And it's building a consumer brand. A consumer brand that sort of solves a problem that every creator that I've met over the last 10 years, every single one asks the same thing. They always ask about marketing. Truth is, a B2B podcast network has very limited finite ability to actually effectively market a podcast outside of, you have Yeah, you have house inventory. You can run promos at scale. You can do all this other stuff. But um, in truth, there are two functions to marketing. It's one, does the creator feel like they are part of a place that there's true alignment in terms of the values? And the values alignment and sort of not just values, but premise, right? Or like audience segment. That way, that becomes a very natural marketing point where they can see themselves in other shows across your roster, and that creates a lot of great cross promotional opportunities right there. But what I've said to do with Companion, and I can get into more about like what Companion generally stands for, but we aim to be a consumer facing brand that sort of stands for something, that stands to meet a moment that we're in where people are feeling increasingly isolated. And so if we build out this brand on social media, direct to consumer, then that creates a marketing funnel to help promote some of our priorities, whether that's owned and operated studio shows that we produce, or whether it's, network partners that we love what they're doing and we're inspired by it. And these are things that we want to make sure that other people know about it as well. So as long as there's that connective tissue across everything, both from a premise standpoint and some audience cross affinity, then it makes all the sense for us to be able to use our consumer facing social media outputs to basically market their product.
So when you think about it, is Companion, you're trying to build the brand of Companion, and then
Mhm.
you've got your shows below you. So if we go back, I'm going to have this example for the rest of our conversation now because you put Bravo in my mind. But in the sense, you're like, all right, everyone knows Bravo, therefore we all know the kind of shows that are under Bravo. Is that kind of what you're going for? And if that's it, is the case, how's it different than what other networks or other ways of operating that you are doing different?
Yeah, and I'm happy I brought up Bravo earlier because when I was approached with this opportunity, it was quite literally Bravo that I was thinking of. And I think that you look at a major media conglomerate like NBC Universal, and when they sort of split the company into two, they sort of put certain assets in one bucket and they put other assets in another, and they put Bravo in the IP bucket. They
Mm.
they separated out from the rest of the cable networks is because they discovered, or what I imagine happened behind closed doors, and having been like pretty close to the development of several cable networks over there, Bravo is a brand. Bravo is is an aspirational brand that also travels. It's got this mobility to it that you might see Bravo as something that represents the content you're making, but there's also BravoCon, and they have a robust merchandising business. You see Bravo on a plane that is above its shows, whereas a lot of cable networks, a lot of sort of homes that put out programming, the actual programming rise a level above the brand that actually hosts them. And that was an issue that we always had in the cable and broadcast TV days, that if somebody were to name a show, they know the show, but they don't know where it is,
Yeah.
right? And so how do you sort of solve for that? And that's why you really got to double down efforts on creating a branded destination, a place that becomes synonymous for all the programming that you know and love, and you expect something from it. So that also creates an opportunity to also aggregate communities across all that programming onto that singular home. And so, what we're building with Companion is a brand that's trying to inspire meaningful good in the world at a time where we need it most. We're trying to inspire people to be good, see good, do good in the world. And at a time where we need it the most, is like the quintessential part of this is because it's the timing. We have surveyed folks out there, and we realize that now is the moment to create a media company across mediums, right? But starting with podcasts, but we also do documentaries. We're working in animation. We also have a video game in development with Penn Badgley. We're working on a number of different things, but it's all centered across 7 different categories that we think ladder up to that idea of inspiring good in humanity, and the nobility of our kind, right? But why now? That is the key essential ingredient of like, why are we building this right now? Is because when we survey people, we find that people are feeling more isolated than ever right now. And for a number of different reasons. It's social media is a very isolating thing. We're doom scrolling left and right. We spend all of our time on platforms like TikTok and Instagram, and it's not to knock any of it, but we sort of get lost in the sauce there. There's also, AI sort of coming about and the uncertainty about the future. We're living in a post-pandemic world where there's hybrid work environments, but I think one of the biggest key issues of why we're feeling so isolated and we're longing for community is probably the geopolitical climate right now, right? Which is, especially here in the US, that we're not as divided as the media makes it seem. We all have American values are pretty universal across, folks from, different walks of life. But I do believe that the general diaspora of the country, the discourse is going to start to change from a feeling of me to a more of a community of we, more of a discourse of we. You're sort of seeing people sort of wake up to it. We see this trend already happening, and so Companion exists to sort of be another voice in the mix to help it propagate even more and sort of lend itself to a movement that we already see happening. And so how do we do this is by putting out meaningful content across parenting and family, across, personal growth, society and culture, a number of different categories that we think are not necessarily underserved, but some of them might be underserved actually. But we think that there are other voices out there that want to do things in these categories, but don't have the proper support to actually get it out there. And sometimes, I've had conversations with people where we have a real conversation and they'll tell me like, AJ, that stuff doesn't make money. I'm like, there is some truth that the do-goodery content sometimes doesn't exactly bring a mass audience. But again, it's about timing and it's also about packaging. So like, how do you get the general idea of inspiring the best in all of us into programming that is generally entertaining and can reach a mass audience, and then the money sort of follows. So yeah, that's a journey that we're on.
Hearing your last part, it kind of reminds me of my God, Krasinski, who did the Feel Good News during COVID,
Right.
and we all clamored for that because it was something good. And then next thing you know, he sold it for millions and kind of get shut down. We're like, hold on, what happened to it? And we're all getting served whatever our standard news is. So you're trying to fail what we knew the market wanted, and how do you do that through Companion?
Yeah. And, part of it is like surveying and feeling like you're tapped into the culture is such a key ingredient in figuring out how to build this brand. Because I think more often than not, as programmers, we're looking at the YouTube landscape, we're looking at the audio landscape, and we're seeing like, this is the type of content that hits. I'm like, you're chasing somebody's tail right now. What you really got to do is flip the equation around and look at the audience and then understand, segment it out, figure out like who they are, how they're generally feeling, and the type of content that maybe they want to seek out, but they can't necessarily find it out there. So it sort of breaks from the thinking of you got to make content that's derivative of one another just because you see it hitting somewhere. Well, in large part, all the biggest hits that we've seen in podcasting were the first of its kind, right? So you have to be first to market with something else. So just because you see it and it hits doesn't mean necessarily that the category itself is like ripe for development. Instead, just look at it from an audience standpoint.
So I guess from that standpoint, if someone here is listening that's thinking about what is it that Companion's doing, like from an operational standpoint? You kind of mentioned you're looking at audience. So I guess is Companion looking at deep audience insights, and you've got someone, or is that you, right? Like looking at it that way, or are we going out there and trying to find new talent, new content? Like, I guess explain to me how you're going about building Companion now compared to where you were with your previous.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're building out in 3 phases. The first phase, and each phase, I think I mentioned this earlier, that the phases are sort of aptly named Be Good, See Good, Do Good. So inspiring people to be good, see good, and do good in the world at a time where they need it the most. But each one of those things are very direct in terms of like what we envision as part of that stage. The first stage, be good, is essentially building out the infrastructure of content, the backbone of everything that we're about, whether we're producing it out of our studios in Woodland Hills, California. We have 3 originals sort of producing weekly content out of there. Those include Soul Boom with Rainn Wilson, Pop Syllabus with Christiana Mbakwe Medina, and Showing Up with Andy Grammer. And we're looking to launch 1 or 2 more originals before the year is out. But on top of that, we're bringing in network partners that are also producing content on their own. They just haven't had, up until the point that we got into discussions, they couldn't find the right home for their content because understandably, most podcast networks, whenever they're evaluating content, they're just looking at the numbers and say, can I sell this? Is it sales worthy? And they're looking at a minimum of, say, 20, 30,000 impressions per episode. They're looking at all that stuff. Certainly there's importance in that, but what we're looking for first and foremost is the quality of the messaging, whether it's in line, does it fit any of our 7 different categories, and is there a true alignment in the spirit of what we're trying to build together? Does everything about what we're trying to build with Companion resonate with them? Then we're the ones that can, probably are best positioned to tell their story, both back to advertisers, but all the other opportunities that we're trying to build out from here. So we're building out this first phase as one would any prototypical podcast network. We brought sales in-house. We have a sales team. We have sales operations. We just brought on a marketing director recently. I'm actually out on the market trying to find a sales director as well. So just providing the revenue infrastructure for creators that are aligned with Companion's mission. Then the second phase of that is basically, how do we aggregate all these communities into a singular digital community and offer something that feels like a step above a subscription platform? So back when I was at Rooster Teeth, we had a subscription or membership community called Rooster Teeth First. And it was kind of, I don't think I fully appreciated it at the time, but when HBO Max was actually in development, they used to actually talk to Rooster Teeth First people. They used to talk to us and understand our product and how different things were sort of, and we were consultants on the development of HBO Max. We didn't realize that we were one of the earliest to market with a really elevated subscription service that offered exclusive and windowed and a live interactive, what you would consider a podcast today, and a number of different things. Now, I think that there is a world where you can build a niche SVOD service, but you have to offer incentives that go beyond just your prototypical subscription service. So certainly you have to provide the foundation. It's basically, like I said, exclusive, windowed content, and the ability for people to sort of interact with one another on the platform itself, both with the shows, but also find a safe digital environment. And safe is a key word, right? Heavily moderated, safe digital environment for people to find one another and sort of create affinity groups within the subscription service. It could be companion moms or companion bicyclists or companion whatever, so that they can interact with one another around their favorite shows or around their sort of common interests. But imagine a service that goes a step beyond that and offers you services that align with the overall mission. Imagine, providing mental health services. Imagine giving them discounts to or access to more healthy food, or community meetups in some regard. And so right now we're ideating on all that stuff, and we already have a place sort of parked where we're looking to launch it sometime next year. So that's the second phase. And then the third phase is essentially, it's how do you mobilize these people, take them from a digital community out into the real world? Because at its nature, it's inspiring people to be good, see good, and do good in the world. We need to get to do good as fast as possible. And do good means, hey, do good is not taking everything that we currently have in our communities for granted, and sort of using the live event structure to sort of reinvigorate how we take podcasts out into the real world. So like the way that I typically describe this is I use an example. Imagine a call to action, which is, hey, companions of New York, come meet us in Central Park. We're going to do Soul Boom with Rainn Wilson for 15 minutes, and then we're going to all roll up our sleeves and plant trees in Central Park. So it's more meetup based that has action at its very center, but we're making it less passive entertainment and more create a safe place to actually for people to meet in real life, right? But under some sort of veneer where they feel good about how they're meeting one another and connecting over, whether it's like that we're volunteering at a pet shelter or whether it's, we're serving food to the homeless. People want to do good, but they also want to feel connected to others. They want to feel loved. They're empathetic. They want all these different things to sort of fit their personal needs, but also contribute to the, greater world. And we want to create a safe place to actually do it, a structured and safe place to actually do it.
You mentioned, I mean, when I'm thinking about this, you mentioned like a bunch of main artists, right? Like Andy Grammer. I mean, when we look at we're recording now after we you did your whole kickoff at South by Southwest and podcast movement in March, but like you have big name, big artists. You mentioned Penn. Like they all have managers. They all have their own talent management. Like how are you guys operating within that realm? And when you're thinking about creating a new network with existing talent, you're looking at it from a what lens, and how does that operate from a legal standpoint?
Yeah. So I guess, it's a real privilege to work with such talented individuals that have really made a name for themselves out there. And to be honest, people like Penn, people like Andy, people like Rain, they were friends of the company already. So it made it that much easier to sort of know what value set we each come from. So like they have very strong moral principles on the type of music, on the type of content that they want to make and put out there, which is very much in line with everything that we want to do. And so through all the, connections that we already had when we told them about what we were building with Companion, they want to be part of that journey, and we're really thankful for it. When it comes to working with other high profile celebrities or high profile talent out there, certainly there's a lot of roadblocks, not roadblocks, excuse me, but rather there's a lot of, things to consider, right? All the mechanics around contracting, all the mechanics around revenue generation and how much risk you're willing to take on, right? Minimum guarantees and all this different stuff.
Yeah.
Listen, we're not adverse to any of that. In fact, we have a very strong ramp, both from a funding and time standpoint to do things. But that also doesn't mean that we're looking to become this massive scaled podcast that grow, 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 spend, spend, spend. It's more the standpoint of like grow meaningfully, grow in the right ways, but we're not afraid to take risk if there's the right partnership to be had. And I think the key ingredient here, beyond the business factors, is the alignment factor. I can't stress this enough that we have to meet with every single creator and we have to know what they're all about. And we make, everything that I described to you about the three phases of how we build that companion. We're very transparent about what it is that we're trying to build, because through that transparency, we hope that people see the greater vision and want to be part of that journey. And that's how we got, Rain and all these other guys to sort of come on board, because they see it, they feel it. From their own audiences and from their own experience building media companies, that we can do this. We can do this together, and the timing is just right.
I guess with those names and what you're building, I think your last comment is like they've got it. They could have done this themselves. Why would someone join a network?
Mm-hmm. That is a great question. Why would someone join a network? And I think my answer to that is why would somebody join a network that doesn't provide anything more than just sales? And that's not to like sort of say anything negative about like networks that just provide sales. My concern with it is that it's easily, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, but I don't care. Sales is a service that is easily replicable. In the same way that I started here in May of last year, and we immediately brought in sales by August, and already started to fill inventory for fourth quarter. If you have the right people, there's all these talented sellers that have access to, let's call it, the six major performance marketing agencies that know all the different players, all the different media buyers, that we all meet up at Podcast Movement or all go meet up at one of these events. And you know this, Greg, better than anyone, that they cycle through different podcast networks. And so whenever I hear a creator saying that, they're going to join a podcast network or something for the sales support, it's one, are you absolutely certain that you couldn't do it yourself? Right. And, sometimes when you run the math on your show, unless you're getting a minimum guarantee that is in multiples beyond the value of your inventory, if you went at it alone, unless you're getting that, then in some cases, if your expected revenue from an ad sales standpoint is, somewhere between 10 and 15 million, or so, like, God bless, then giving up, let's say 15 to 30% margin on that revenue, you could just as easily save a lot of money by hiring a very talented seller and a very talented sales operations person to just sort of handling it all in-house. And for this reason, there's a lot of creators out there that have the numbers, and have been seen by the major performance marketing agencies of high conversion, that are now taking a lot of these things in-house and saying that we're going to build our own, networks, or whether it's centered on their show or whether they can use their profile and their marketing power to help, promote other shows that they either want to bring into the network or they want to incubate themselves. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But yeah, there's a certain level of creator that, sometimes you could just do it on your own.
No, this is this is one of the reasons why I have this show. It's seeing how many creators were thinking, oh, I want to go join this network. And it's either because that's a name they know, it's no knocks to the value of the marketing of those big companies, but that's why we know them. They've done a great job. Going back to your Bravo example, we know Bravo. Hopefully Companion becomes one of those networks as well, because you guys have branded and people are like, I want to either join this network or I want to keep listening to the content of this network. But yeah, the joy of the show is to figure out, like, how do we help creators understand there's other networks out there, and then how do I shed a light on networks like your own, where it's like, you guys, there's other networks that you could be looking at. Know why you want to join a network, and to your point, if I just wanted for sales, then great, then go join a team for sales, get the relationships you need, and then move on and do it yourself, which is an easy thing, unless you just want to offload that, which is something you can do.
I think that's brilliant. And, I think that a lot of other entities and players in the, let's call it, the creator game, know that truth as well. And so you have management companies, you have talent agencies, you've got influencer marketing agencies, all that are also sort of looking back and saying that, well, we could just do this on our own, right? So short of, again, getting what we call in the industry a stupid money deal, which God bless, if you can get it, absolutely take it. But also at the same time, if you don't get it, then, the most exciting thing I can imagine is sort of building it. And it's also a great path for a creator to build something that might exist beyond their personal popularity. It's kind of like an investment, right? And that's largely how we position also Companion. It's like we're building a consumer facing brand that you'll be part of and you get all the sort of benefits of. But we want to make this a community of sorts of, like, hopefully you'll see benefits beyond, your show.
So you mentioned you brought sales in pretty much, what is that, 4 months after? We're recording this in June, so you're a year into taking over as general manager, but like, what operational processes, what are you still trying to operationalize, stack together, figure out that if I was a network operator, I'd be like, oh, why haven't I thought about that because you've already done this before.
Yeah. So one quick point of clarification. So our company, I'm the general manager. I handle like all the revenue side and sort of like the network build out and also
Yeah.
involve brand. But we also have our president who brought me in, Ford Bowers, really talented individual, an amazing partner on this journey. And I just wanted to do a quick shout out to him because he's largely been the brainchild of the early version of this. And then when he brought me in, that's when I was just like, all right, we could do this together. And then we started to fill it out with more visionaries to help build this thing. So grateful to the team. But your question was operationally, like what
Yeah.
else we need to sort of bring into the fold. So we had sales and operations, which moved pretty quickly. And what's also great about the sales and operations part is that there's technology that exists that allows you to turnkey make it operational very quickly. You take a platform like LiveRead, which we use. And if it had not been for that platform and our relationship with Ilya's and Mike and the team over there in getting us up and running in such a short period of time, I would have had to build a system all on my own, all over again using Airtable or something. Not to knock Airtable. Airtable is a wonderful system. It would have taken me a very, very long time just to get that in order. So like LiveRead, there's also analytics tools like Podstock that exist there, and having access to a system like Podscribe to understand the general market and use it as sort of like kind of a hit list to see who's spending money on what shows and making a case for different things. So there's all these resources that exist to essentially get a network up and running. But what's beyond that? So it's building out the social media and marketing engine. Um, a lot of networks out there, they have a marketing department that do the basics. It's like cross promos, guest swaps, promo swaps, just all that different stuff. And they yield the returns that they do. We brought in a marketing director to focus on both that, but also focus on the consumer facing brand itself and build out our profile on social media. Right now, it's super, super small, but we literally just kicked it off at South by. But we have a general sort of vision for what it is and the different types of content that we're looking to put on it. And so we're going to be rocking and rolling with that shortly. So there's the marketing function. We are then have to start thinking about phase 2 of this plan, which is, excuse me, you were talking about like for a prototypical podcast network, what are the sort of operational elements there? I mean, certainly a strong sales team. And I'll tell you that, like I said earlier, most podcast networks, the bread and butter is performance marketing agencies. It's the Oxfords, it's the ad results, it's the right side ups, and so on and so forth, right? And we're grateful for them. They're the ones that bring in a lot of those leads and brands and really prop up podcasting in a way that just help us build our businesses. But also, there are so many podcasts trying to get their attention. There's so many options for them to choose from. For a podcast network to truly stand out, they really have to build a base with brand awareness brands, right? It's building more inroads with the Madison Avenue, more traditional agencies, the holding companies, the Ogilvies, the Marcoms, like the big agencies that hold the most amount of dollars that typically you'd see them float those dollars to places like TV and radio and so on and so forth. But listen, TV's on the decline. And they're sometimes they have some trouble figuring out where to actually put their spend, and podcasting is increasingly becoming a much bigger and bigger part of that pie. But I think where a podcast network would win and where I'm trying to place more focus in is building our relationships with brands that are non-endemic to podcasting, but would be open to it if you went in through the influencer route and created more holistic 360 packages that not just include the show, but include just the overall likeness of the host and just do something that much more integrated over a longer period of time that also yields better results in alignment.
So I think from that last piece, it's it's values alignment, but you're also looking at the right talent that's not only aligned with you, but could also be uh, could create that 360, right? So if you want to go Andy's like he's a big star, he's got an albums, he's putting out music. You're like, hey, I need you to do this. He's like, no, I'll give you my podcast advertising and you could sell that for my show, but I'm not going to do these events. I'm not going to do all these other different things because I've got my own avenue or my own manager that wants me to do that. But you need someone that actually is on board with all of that in order to make a companion work, but B to make the financials work, right?
Yeah, to make the financial work, and also just from a competitive standpoint, give ourselves a bit more of a differentiator, because the podcast networks that just sort of rest on their laurels and just focus sales towards the the dollars that have already been sort of earmarked for podcasting from the same places. It's really tough to manage a business that way, because I'm not gonna mince words. It's from the CPM standpoint, it's challenging, right?
Yeah, yeah.
when when you got if I'm a media buyer and I'm looking at this abundance of supply and everybody wants my money, then I got a lot of leverage over the pricing. But and then, how do you explain back to a massive celebrity that we sold an ad at this rate? uh, and, but it's based on the performance of the podcast, and they're just like, this thing is like using my likeness. This thing is using all these different things. Then all of a sudden you get a call from their talent agent, say like, you sold a spot for X. I haven't gotten this one, but I can imagine the troubles that reps also go through, that podcasting become this sort of backhanded sort of back channel way of getting access to celebrities and getting endorsements and getting all this stuff at a fraction of the rate than they would get it going directly through their representation, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and yeah, that's increasing. I mean, for obviously it's industry peers that are listening to this. I mean, what's the biggest thing that we're talking about right now? It's not just the fact that podcasts, how do you define it, and the fact that they're going everywhere now. It's also this growing trend of licensing podcast host reads to then put paid media behind and boosting them, and just getting them outside of their podcast setting and just using them on social media. Well, that's actually complicated, because now you're basically really relying on celebrity likeness and getting a true endorsement that you have sort of unlimited potential in finding reach, and you paid a fraction of the cost. That's tough. That is tough.
No, I apologize to anyone listening. A quick story, because it goes to what you were saying. When I was selling podcast ads, we had a show on our network with CBS, and big celebrity, but their podcast was only doing 1,000 downloads. Now, this was years ago, but also they were able to get millions of people on their Instagram. They couldn't get anyone to follow them. And so going to the market and try and sell the talent, and their management's like, this is garbage. And I'm like, what do you want? I mean, it's 1,000 downloads. What am I supposed to get you more than a $20 CPM type deal? I don't remember what we were selling, but like, that's basically it. And that is exactly why the brand's like, hold on, I can get this person to basically give me quote unquote endorsement without. Yeah, you see that. I saw that back then, and I'm sure that's happening more now, right?
Because you brought this up, I find this to be such an interesting topic, and one that I've only had conversations about in closed doors. But screw it, let's talk about it right now, real quick. When celebrities go into podcasts, I feel like expectations need to be set a little bit more. And I thought like there was a real reckoning and understanding, like the pandemic days when productions were down and a lot of celebrities jumped into podcasts, understandably, and I appreciate it. So, and then the podcast ended after 7 episodes, and there's like, no one's listening, no one's watching. I think one of the biggest issues facing what we label as a celebrity today is not always aligned with what a true influencer really is in our world. And that's why they're not seeing the numbers. You might know the name, as a celebrity, but do you care about their POV on a subject matter? Would you be willing to tune in to listen to a 45-minute conversation hosted by them? What's their view on the world, etc.? Because a lot of celebrities out there, they have been, they are archetypes of the studio system, right? A studio executive has isolated the celebrity. We're going to make you a big star. We're going to use every resource at disposal to basically boost you up and make you a known name in the universe. But that does not necessarily mean that that translates to a direct to consumer standpoint. And so the real definition of what constitutes a celebrity has everything to do with this whole transition in media in general to this direct to consumer environment, right? The audience's opinion is what matters most, and it's going to be who decides who's a celebrity and who's not. There's an old saying that not every celebrity is an influencer, but every influencer is a celebrity, right? So I just think it's an interesting idea.
No, thanks for sharing it. But no, it's true, which is probably why you're seeing Instagram and YouTubers becoming. I mean, we're filming this right now in June. Top two movies are YouTube directors, I guess, that made big box office. So you're seeing the change in content, not only distribution, but also, as you've mentioned, building a community, building a following through some kind of medium that people want what you have to say, and that doesn't always translate.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great example. These two movies that are, hitting the multiples of what actually of the financing and just completely, blew expectations. So really happy to see that happen.
So since the way you guys are operating Companion is very unique and different than the way you operate at Rooster Teeth, the audience here that's listening, that I always try to cater towards is like, if I want to join a network, because we asked the question, why should I? But if I want to join a network, like, what should I be doing? What should I be thinking about? What questions should I be pondering so that I choose the right network? Because maybe they'd love to join yours. It's like, all right, there maybe not be the right fit, but there's others out there that could be looking at.
Yeah. So one, I would be very realistic about the numbers. So like looking at your numbers and saying that, unless if your show is hitting, if for anybody who's listening that wants to join a network, just know that most networks are either selling you from an audio scaled standpoint where you have such a library that you're hitting high volume and you have enough inventory for them to do programmatic, sales across your entire library, or they do a fully embedded approach for simulcasted shows where it's largely host read and it's just two different sales processes. And so the question that I think they should be asking a possible network partner is very simple, actually. How would you package and take my show out to market? Yeah. That way you start to understand some of their thought process around where do they see the most value and how, meaning, based on, and you'll see them actually do the math in real time, hopefully, or they can provide you with some sort of an analysis that shows you that this route of actually selling your show by just doing dynamic places across your entire library because you have X volume on audio, but not much volume on video, if it even exists. But also understanding that, say you have your show and there's all these like tidbits going on in podcasting right now that are a little disruptive, like, Spotify turning on, Spotify having video and now your streams getting separated from your total RSS downloads, or, take it a step further. If your show is activated for the Spotify creator program, well, now that just locked out all dynamic insertion for whatever percentage of your audience that happens to be Spotify premium users. And so how much volume is there for a network partner to actually sell? So you want to be transparent about the distribution on the show and where you plan on taking it, and what your interests are in like taking advantage of whatever platform, new programs there are. But also by the same token, asking them that pointed question of like, how would you package my show? And what's your process of actually taking out to market. You also get a better view into like how they tell your story. Are they just going to add it to a rate card and continue to sort of do the whole thing where it's like, hey, I got a new show, here's the poo poo platter, take your pick? Or do they go out there and um, not just send emails, but like, make phone calls, make sure that they are matchmaking with specific brands because they know your story so well. They've asked you for a brand wish list. They've asked you for all these different things because they want to get to know you as a creator so that they can figure out where the opportunities are out there.
No, that's great insights, especially from the ad sales standpoint.
It's prioritization, right? It's you kind of want to get a sense of how well they're going to prioritize your show.
So what would be the red flags?
The red flags to me are if you know your numbers are low and they're telling you that we're going to make you X amount of money or something like that. Um, how do they know that? You know what I mean? They can give you a general range of what your inventory might be worth based on how they are going to package a show and what they think that the demand is. But if they start giving you dollar figures and you're bright-eyed and bushy-tailed about it, I think that's a little bit of a red flag. The ones who are really transparent and sort of telling you that, hey, by the way, I think your inventory is worth this amount. There might be some challenges along the way. We want to go through a brief testing period where we're going to take you out to certain brands that I think that would be a good fit for you. And then after that, based on the time of year that it is, because we're going into Q3, and because Q4 is this, and based on like how many available dollars there are in the market and what the economic conditions are, when you see somebody go through that thought process, you're just like, oh, they got it going on, right? They understand, and also you're setting proper expectations with that creator is saying like, I'm gonna move mountains to sell your show, but I'm also not gonna sell you upstream right now, right? Let's be real, and I'm always gonna keep it 100 with you.
It's funny how I'm smiling. Anyone who's not watching, like I'm literally smiling right now because I'm seeing the wheels turn. I'm seeing you process that, and in my mind, I'm going two different sides. I can go with that one creator who's like, "Hold on, that was a lot to throw at me," and as you said, you want that person because they literally just gave you the lowdown of what it was. And you got the other person who's like, hold on, I just want someone to tell me how much am I going to make. And the person who's going to tell me that, then I'm going to go with that. And then 5 months later, you realize that you probably should have gone with that person who gave you the whole analysis because yeah, everything you just described from a creator standpoint, like market changes, your business changes in 6 months. Like most people don't realize how networks are evolving to the market itself. So I don't know what advertisers are going to want in 6 months. No one could have predicted COVID and all ad dollars kind of like being dried up. So it's another reason why I started the show to try and help open minds for creators and understanding like this is what you should be thinking about when it's going to be the monetization conversation you're having.
There's all these like little, you're absolutely right. And there's all these little tidbits that I've actually never heard anyone talk about. Market and economic conditions when it comes to being a little bit better, more predictive about available podcast ad dollars. Like, I don't hear anyone talking about, well, what about the federal interest rate? Don't we like y'all know that impacts our business in a massive, massive way because these companies are doing outlooks for the future and they're betting on this interest rate coming down at a certain point. If the Fed changes something and now the business needs to recalibrate, where's the first place that they take those dollars from? It's marketing.
Marketing. Yep.
And that means less dollars that goes back to their media buying agencies, which means you'll start to see cancellations roll through. And so whenever any network gets cancellations, I mean, we all talk to each other. And so like, oh, why did this person cancel like all these spots? I thought this was working. What's going on? And then you hear another network that also had all their spots canceled. And then you start to put two and two together that, there's clearly something happened behind the scenes here. And it's, in part, something might be happening at the business, or it might be like the economic outlook has changed a little bit. And so you sort of have to move with it. But the podcast networks that are not tuned in to the greater truths that are going on out there. And I'll give you another example. What happens when people's wallets get pinched, right? Is the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? What do people start to pull back their spend on? It starts with luxury goods and then it moves its way down. And so I argue that a lot of the advertisers that are currently spending the most amount of money in podcasting are essentially luxury goods, right? Some of them fall outside of it, but there's a fair amount of them. Like you don't need the subscription to whatever. Um, and so that based on how consumer sentiment index is sort of going in a certain period of time, you might see the impact on that sort of take place in the podcast marketing and advertising side the quarter thereafter. So everything is sort of interconnected, and it's really important for a podcast network to stay in the know of what's happening out there so that you can sort of recalibrate from there.
No, that's a great one. It's also a value for anyone that's listening that runs a network. Like AJ's kind of dropping the knowledge here of like be in the know of not just as you've described previously the tech side to run your network, but also if you're working on the advertising side of it, like keep those things in mind because that is going to pay pains, I guess, for your own creators and trying to educate them on these process.
Yeah, tell the creators everything that's going on. I think more information is better than no information. Don't keep everything rosy, just for the sake of like keeping everybody happy. Because at some point when shit does hit the fan, right? You're gonna have to that becomes a primer. So it's good to have like regular check-ins with creators. So like currently we have our bi-weeklies with every single creator in our network. It takes a lot of time, but it's such an important thing for us to sort of explain, understand what's going on in their business. If they can hear what's going on in Companion's business, and we can also give them sort of an overview on things that we're seeing out there in the market, just so that they're prepared for anything. And you never know what comes out of that conversation. But dialogue and honesty is important here.
It's a good one. You've mentioned community and the community of companion and community of activating people in your three different phases. But do you do any community in terms of actual companion talent? Like you're doing these bi-weekly calls, but are you bringing Andy and Rain and everyone else, all your creators on a call going like, hey, how do we make introductions? How do we see the cross? Because I have to imagine some of the work you're doing is like, hey, Rain works with Andy, and how do we come together with a project if those never have talked to each other and they're always just working through you or their managers as a middleman? Is there value of having the community component for what you guys are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's different layers of community. It's one
Right.
amongst the creators that we work with, and we don't have to be Companion doesn't have to be necessarily a always on facilitator, but we are more than happy to sort of create that touch point and sort of sort of be involved as much as possible. More often than not, they want us to be involved so that we can sort of manage aspects of it. But the way that our creators are working with one another right now is kind of some basic stuff. It's right now they're guesting on each other's shows. So, Rain appeared on Andy's show, Andy appeared on his show. And we've had a number of other creators also appear in one another's things or do sort of 1-2 part episodes between shows to help really, sort of cross-pollinate audiences a little bit more effectively. And we're looking to do a whole lot more of that in the future. I mean, the first evidence of just the community that we're starting to build out as creators, our sort of proof of concept was actually our South by Southwest launch. It was just like one big love
That was
fest.
amazing. That was great.
Oh, thank you so much. It absolutely blew past our expectations. I mean, we were over capacity, but our creators, the ones we brought out to the event, they felt so great about just how everything went down, both not not just because of the attendance or how well the content were received, but I saw them sort of exchanging phone numbers with one another. I saw them, and the most rewarding thing that I saw is when they started to refer to themselves as companions. And that right there was the idea. The name of our brand is the personification of the people. We want people to refer to each other as one another's companions. And without prompting anybody, like I'll see creators in our orbit just like just uh referring to them and each other as it, and it was just happening naturally. And I loved every minute of it.
And that's kind of cool, as opposed to like, oh, are you on the companion network? It's like, no, we're companions together. It's
Companion, yeah.
that's kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah, that's the idea. And we're hoping that once we start to aggregate these audiences into a singular community for people to sort of find one another, that they all start to refer themselves as companions. And that's the idea.
Well, we've talked a bunch about talent. We literally just talked about cross promos. Uh, we know, especially since the show is about podcast networks, there's so many podcasts out there that are struggling to get discovered. So I always like to ask, what's one podcast you think people should be listening to that people may not know about?
A podcast. I can't. Can I call out any of my own?
Sure, you can call it your own. I mean, you've already done a bunch, so we'll throw those all in the show notes, and then, of course, I throw everything into my monthly newsletter, so highlighting there. But yeah, any
Yeah. I'm going to bashfully call out one of my own, and it is Pop Syllabus with Cristiano Mbakwe Medina. This show we premiered it back in January, and it deals with the science behind what's popular. And our host, she comes from such a rich background. She was a writer on The Daily Show. She was Trevor Noah's co-host on his podcast. She's been she's also a writer on The Morning Show. She is just a wonderful, just creative. And she brings such an insight and spirit into everything that she talks about. And that's one show that I hope continues to grow. We're seeing week after week growth. Now, it's not explosive growth because I think that the subject matter is it gets so deep into the weeds and bring on all these experts. We don't necessarily like bring on massive celebrities to talk sort of very peripherally about certain subject matter. No, she brings in like actual experts in the same way Stephen Bartlett brings in experts on certain subject matters. And right now we're looking to take a more doing a big sort of marketing shift on that show to sort of flood the zone across platforms so that more and more people hear about it. But it's one that's gotten love by critics. It's gotten love by, Spotify as a platform, just the quality, it passes the muted TV test. You just look at it and you're just like, wow, this is like a TV quality show right here with such interesting people. I'm going to unmute this and hear everything that they have to say. We're just really proud of it, and I hope it continues to grow.
Look, I can imagine, especially since the 90s are back, right? You can cover in so many different pop cultural pieces around like, why are the 90s back? Where's this? And that's an episode in itself, but you can go deeper than that. So I'm interested in checking that piece out. Thanks for sharing. And to that whole point, everyone always complains that there's so many podcasts, but no one complains about books. So I always throw the next question is what's one book that you would recommend to people? It could be a fun novel, a kid's book, whatever book you want to recommend, because people complain that there's too many podcasts, but we don't compare to that book. So,
gosh, I was not prepared for this question.
I always recommend Ryan Berman's Return on Courage, especially since we record these on Thursdays. I release on Thursdays, and his newsletter is what I always look forward to on Thursdays, even if I don't listen to his podcast.
Iceberg is melting.
My iceberg is melting.
Our iceberg is melting, changing and succeeding under conditions. I think it's been a while since I read that book, and when I was in business school, man, we got every book from good to great to like every known title out there to read, and it's such a short read. What I love about it is that whenever people go through their careers, I see people taking this very defensive approach when it comes to succeeding something. Either that they have to hold on to something, or they have to hold on to a task, or they have to hold on to something that is so great. But the truth is, you're never going to grow if you just hold on to that thing, because eventually it will get taken away from you. And so you wonder why businesses burn down or why businesses sort of lose their footing, is because they have to constantly be in a state of evolving because you have to evolve or die. One of the worst pieces of advice I've ever gotten was I was at, I'll say it, I was at the Sci-Fi Network, and there was a certain individual that I told them that, oh man, I used to have this one thing and I don't have it anymore. And they would say that, oh man, you should absolutely take it back. Like that's your thing, right? That's it. But the better advice that I should have gotten is like, go find your next iceberg.
Mm,
Go find your next thing. Like, for example, when I came on board as a general manager, you build something and then you pass it on. So I built out sales. Now I'm hiring somebody, pass it on. Build something else, pass it on. So you might take a preservation strategy of like, this thing is working, I need to hold on to it. But the true growth comes from passing the torch and go challenge yourself to do something new, even though it's scary and it's volatile in all possibility. But the only way that you're going to truly win is that if you chart new course, and that's how you're going to make yourself a real killer.
there you go. Our both our book recommendations align around courage and finding growth. So I like it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love this stuff.
Well, AJ, is there anything else? I mean, when we think about, we've covered quite a bit around how you've been building your networks, how you're thinking about networks. Is there anything else that you'd want to cover?
I don't know if there's anything else, but just to like quickly, underline a point that I made earlier is brands are everything. They stand the test of time. It's a thing that can make or break any single organization, but the true power in any organization, depending on what you're trying to do. But I think that the next version of a podcast network is probably more akin to what you imagine a TV network is, with consumer facing value, and one that creators want to join, because when creators look at a home, they don't just see the service, they also see its resonance with their own audience, right? And so that's where the sort of alignment comes into play, and they want to be part of that mission. And the other thing is just, for people who work in podcasting, I keep getting into trouble with this, but over time, people starting to see that with streamers now licensing podcasts, that's always made sense to me for years, and for a number of us out there that sort of see podcasting as not a medium, but the evolution of media itself. It makes sense to me that Netflix and Hulu and Tubi and all these other places would want to license a show that they can get a 30th of the cost that it takes to produce this, as original content. There was a point in time where I was making shows anywhere from $150,000 a half hour all the way up to $2 million for an hour. And in the talk show space. But the truth is, you can get these things done a lot cheaper with a lot more efficiency. And podcasting is proving that. And so because there's no back end to content, or there's not as much of a back end to content as there once was, it makes sense to me that streamers would license something that exists, because not only are they able to take more swings on that front, but also because it comes with the marketing component already built in. It comes with a built-in audience. Why wouldn't they want to do it? And I think that we're all going to win as a result.
Yeah, I mean, it's everyone's always looking for what's the new thing and who's got a built-in audience. I mean, we've heard the stories about certain, I mean, I live in Hollywood, certain actors not getting on a film because their social following wasn't as big as another actor. It's like, all right, what else can you bring besides just that talent? And here you're saying like, all right, you've got to be able to expand your reach, do more than just what that original piece of content was. That's hence why it goes beyond that. Well, AJ, this was great. Thank you so much for spending the time. Congrats again on the success. As we said, March, that event was great. So whenever you listen to this, know that you missed one heck of a party. And I guess coming out for Companion, but I'm excited to see what you guys have to do going forward.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you for everything that you're doing for the business and sort of highlighting all these stories across the industry. Thank you for your support, and thanks to your audience for, listening.
Well, you made it this far. I really appreciate it. Like, I truly do, because let's be honest, Most of us don't make it to the end of the episode, but you did. So if you give me a few extra minutes of your time, let me give you my views on my conversation with AJ. To start, I brought up the idea of what it means to build a consumer-facing network brand. Not just producing shows, but actually building a destination that stands for something and travels across platforms. The idea came up right away and it kept resurfacing through our conversation. Besides this, there were a few things that I walked away from this conversation. First, what struck me was how AJ sees network as the actual differentiator, not podcast. He's betting that podcast might fade as a term, but network will keep evolving, just like TV, which means the way you define yourself, brand versus medium, changes to just not what your marketing is, but how you build loyalty for the long term. Second, the way Companion is structured into real operational phases. Be good, see good, do good. It's not aspirational branding. They're actually mapping growth from content backbone to digital membership to real world activation. There's a direct line between the mission and how you architect the business. Most networks don't approach scaling this way. They focus on content, maybe audience, but not a stage evolution that can reach beyond media and into action. Third thing what surprised me was the refusal to treat sales as the end all. AJ made it clear a lot of networks just offer sales as a service. That's easy replicated. His view is that unless you, as a creator, are getting truly outsized value, something you can't build yourself, sales only play probably isn't the reason to join a network anymore. It's a very different model than most creators expect, and it changes how you look at joining a network versus building your own capabilities. Fourth, the way AJ described transparency with creators. Having bi-weekly check-ins, giving honest updates on the ad market, and exploring what's really happening when cancellations come in kind of stood out to me. Those aren't just processes, those are signals of how serious they are in treating the relationships they have. There's a subtle challenge here to every operator. Are you training your talent to weather an unpredictable market? Or are you leaving people in the dark until there's a problem? Fifth, the way operational tools make or break a network. He talked about the practical stack. Platforms for ad operations, analytics, and scan the market and understand advertisers' behavior. What's interesting is how much of this is now accessible, meaning the technical barrier to entry for building a functional network is lower than ever. But how you use those tools is what sets you apart. Changes how you look at launching quickly versus building something robust and differentiated. There's a lot there to sit in, and I'm curious what you learned. So reach out and let me know. Subscribe to the show. Once again, I thank you for tuning in. To those of you who've rated and reviewed, reached out with comments, thank you. Make sure you go ahead and leave your review and subscribe. As I say, life is about time and relationships. You have no clue where one conversation will take you. This is why I'm able to have this show and provide you these conversations. This is why I love networking. And you have no clue where listening to these conversations will take you, now or in the future, but I can guarantee you your future self will thank you for tuning in. I live on LinkedIn. Reach out. Let's talk. To those of you who've already done so, I appreciate it. That alone means this podcast is having value and creating the conversations that I wanted to have. I have a newsletter that promotes podcasts to listen to, as discovery for podcasts is incredibly difficult. It's on my LinkedIn profile. Subscribe and find podcasts to review weekly, along with my guest recommendations. Once again, subscribe where you listen. New episodes come out every Thursday, wherever you consume your podcast. Until next time, I appreciate you.